What were Jesus' last words? Go out into the whole world and make disciples. This Catholic podcast will help you respond to that call and invitation from our Lord.
Together, we'll learn from leaders in the new evangelization, those out there on the front lines witnessing to God's love, and discuss tips that you can implement today.
So what are you waiting for?
Go make disciples.
Welcome, friends. We have a super exciting guest with us today, Mr. Edmund Mitchell from the show. Welcome, Edmund. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, I am so excited to be here. It's exciting to be here. We've talked for like an hour before the show, and I'm excited for us
finally
now.
hit record.
I'm excited for us now to really dive in deep.
Yeah, so we don't have a Patreon channel, but if we did, the first hour of the show would have to be on it.
Yeah. That's on the After Dark.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, so Edmund, we came across your show back in 2020 when we were in the dark winter of COVID, and everybody had way more time to browse the internet than they did otherwise. And I remember starting to see your show, and I was like, this guy's like, he's doing something that nobody else has done. And
that's that. I don't know if I believe that, but that is a very, very nice thing to say.
Well, I really do think that. Well, I really do believe that, and I will admit I'm prone to exaggeration, but but I stand by. Like if I underdo it or like tone it down a little bit, I'd say your show is unique in the genre. Yeah, definitely the genre. Like I don't think there's anybody else out there doing what you're doing, and it's you've stepped into a huge vacuum, and so. Like I just hope that your channel continues to grow and you get more and more people coming on.
Thank you for saying that.
You're welcome, man. But
Justin, anything else nice you want to say about that? You want to throw in?
I really cannot say more than what Dan. I love you, Edmund. That's the only next place I can go after that.
Great.
I was going to say, I love your Canadian tuxedo.
Oh yeah, I do that a lot. So for those of you listening at home, that means like wearing denim all over, like it's the 90s all over again. Like Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. Yeah, I do that too much. So
well, I had an awesome like bright green jeans jacket I bought for an 80s party 3 years ago, but I don't know what happened to it. I wish I had. I put it on right now, Edmund.
I know exactly what happened to it. Your wife threw it away when you weren't looking.
She was the one that bought it for me for this party. Actually, it was a 90s party, and my favorite thing about that was singing 90s boy bands ballads. Well, no one else wanted me to do it, but just taking the mic. It was my party, so I
knew we would get along. I knew we'd be best friends, Justin. And now,
Justin, I don't think you can sing a 90s ballad. Like I don't think you can.
Yeah, we'll have to try that out. Maybe next episode.
What a graceful dodge.
That was a snowball, man. You could have nailed that.
Before we hit record, we said we were going to stay on track, and here we are, man.
True. Here we are, Dan. Dan, you're the head of this. You're the captain of the ship, man.
Yeah, I know. That's me. Sorry. So, alrighty. You were one of the things that caught my eye about you early on was it was a video that you put out where you just said, I just left my job in ministry to do full-time digital media, new media evangelization. What was the Lord doing in your heart that make you say, now's the time?
Man, how much time should we spend on this? I mean, it's a lot. And I was thinking about this because this is like the second time maybe that I was in an interview and someone asked me to explain more what happened. And I've had a little bit of time to process. I'm definitely still healing from a lot of that. Not that it was, I don't want to over exaggerate how traumatic it was, but still trying to piece together what happened. The long and short of it, or I guess I'll use a abbreviated version and then you could decide how deep you want to go into this. But
yeah.
I decided I discerned at one point that I felt like God was calling me to parish ministry. And that meant something very particular for me. It meant my wife and I felt called to like a missionary lifestyle, like living our vocation in our marriage as missionaries. Like at our wedding, we planned our wedding. Like, how do we reach out to the people that are going to be coming and like reach out to them with the gospel or have them experience like the church? And when I decided to go to Franciscan University, study catechetics and evangelization and go into parish ministry, I just felt this call in my heart to be in that full time for as long as God wanted me to be in it. And to me, what that meant, reading the church documents and discerning ministry and discerning like my kind of role in it, a lot of people around me, or not a lot of people, but there are some people that think parish ministry is a stepping stone, or youth ministry is a stepping stone to adult ministry. Adult ministry in a parish is a stepping stone to diocesan or maybe a larger organization. And I just believe so much in the parish's ability to evangelize that, like, on the parish level, the grassroots level, the local church has such a opportunity to evangelize. So I have made, not to pat myself on the back, but made lots of sacrifices because of that. Like, as people know, I'm preaching to the choir. Parish ministry does not pay exceptionally well often. Salaries are not exceedingly high, and often throughout the 10 years of parish ministry, other opportunities or other job offers or other things that I said no to because I wanted not only to work in parish ministry, but to what I feel is bring about change and shift in a parish culture that is bigger than an individual personality. So the parishes or the people that I looked up to in ministry had been at a parish longer, or if you look at organizations or universities or ministries, like there was a point where things evolved beyond a personality. Like the Lord started moving beyond the personality. This is like true discipleship. Like it becomes a culture, and it's not Father Mike Scanlon. This is just Franciscan University, or it's not, whatever. Like there's plenty of examples of that. So I'm getting really long-winded here, but I felt when COVID hit, a lot of the things that had been small frustrations became even bigger frustrations. And I got to a point where I felt called to just say that the best thing for the parish that I'm still a parishioner of, and the city that my family feels called to be a missionary family in, I really was frustrated and felt like sometimes things have to get worse in order to get better. And I was just frustrated. I'd had enough. And I haven't really said it that directly before. And so thank you for giving me an opportunity to vent and process. But I didn't want anyone to think that I left because it's really hard, right? Because like to call out things that you're frustrated with in a very public manner could cause scandal or could cause confusion, or you don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I also didn't want anyone to be confused about, oh, he must have got a better job opportunity, or he must have, like, I literally quit with no plan. And I wanted implicitly or explicitly everyone to know, and the people that I spoke to know that I don't have a plan and we're not going anywhere and we're still parishioners. Anyways, so sorry, like that's my kind of unfiltered, I said that was my short version, but so the long story short is I was very frustrated and felt like our parish was not doing enough, and that I wanted to give back my salary, and I felt like I could be just as effective as a volunteer and impact the city than I could as a staff member.
That's a bold move, man. I'm impressed. There's a lot of honesty and integrity that goes into that, to say like, I'm so frustrated with the situation right now that I would rather not work here. I mean, it's really, to me, it's a way of saying I so strongly disagree with everything that's going on that I'm going to stop accepting money from this like entity, to say like, I need to back out because I don't like what's going on here. And the best way for me to say that is to leave.
Yeah. And now I'm like processing everything I just said. I mean, I care deeply about the parish. I care deeply about the people and the leadership that I'm frustrated with. Like I care really deeply about them, and we don't want to leave or go anywhere. I still deep down consider myself a parish minister, like, or a missionary in Grapevine. Like God planted us here in a city, and I've been praying for a long time to be planted in one city over the long term. And we think God's calling us to do that in Grapevine.
But I've had a similar experience. I think you're right that the frustration can be a blessing, and I think one thing that's interesting about being a lay person serving in the church? Because I think all three of us have felt that call to be a lay minister in the church specifically. Because I've had friends that care just as much about the faith as you or I, but they felt called to be in the corporate world. They felt called to do the other things.
Yeah.
I really felt called to be in the church. But one time I was in a position where I felt some frustrations, and I said, God, what do I do? And I heard the Holy Spirit tell me in my heart, you can leave.
Mm.
And that's the difference as a layperson,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, you feel this calling to a certain location, Edmund, but we as lay people, we aren't bound to specific locations. The Holy Spirit can move us where it wills. This conversation makes me think of, I wonder if, as time goes on, as we move further from Vatican II, a theology of like the lay church may develop over time, because it's interesting to me too how like people are called to different roles. People
Yeah.
feel a call to diocesan, people feel a call to lay apostolates. It's just amazing how the Holy Spirit's working in this lay side of the church. It's kind of like uncharted territory a little bit still.
Yeah, and all of us need to navigate. I mean, there are a lot of people that think they're called to professional ministry when really they're feeling the call to just
Yeah.
the gospel call to be commissioned as a disciple. And then vice versa, right? Like, so I have always had to, as a professional quote unquote parish minister or a lay ecclesial minister or whatever the correct word is, I've always had to navigate, like, am I really feeling called to parish ministry, or is it just evangelization or lay ministry? And there's all these different
Amen.
places for it. I really just have a heart for people who do have that call to work in a parish alongside a pastor and a diocese. And there's such a need for it. And one or two things I used to always tell people, and I think because of that willingness to sacrifice a great deal, but also hold myself and parishes to such a high standard, I think that's the pressure that parishes and pastors and the church needs. So for instance, I've always had traditionally zero tolerance for youth ministers complaining about their salary, because I'm like, you accepted the position. Like, if we all, not that I think we should unionize, but if we all just don't accept, like, who's accepting these jobs? The supply and demand market economics, like, is kind of at play here. And yes, pastors need to offer more, but also all of us need to ask for more and not just put up with mediocre. And so I'm giving this, pushing for this and giving this advice and constantly pushing for this. And I felt like I reached a point where I needed to take a little bit of my own advice and say, look, you're settling for mediocrity, and that 20% of your job, that 20% of possibility or potential in your parish that you're frustrated with, maybe that's not okay anymore. Maybe that's not okay maybe it's better to just be a lay volunteer and do that 80% really well without taking a salary. So anyways, I mean, there's a lot there, and you can tell that I'm pretty raw about that, but I'm excited and honored that you're asking me to share that. I think people need to hear that, I think we need to hear that we can't put up with mediocrity anymore. We gotta like dig in. If you're a parishioner, like, you should go into your parish and ask to see more than just the financial budget breakdown they put in the bulletin. Like, that's not enough. You need to see and ask questions. How are we measuring success? Cause I can tell you as a parish minister that was tough. That was tough. That was a tough conversation to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Really, really grateful for your transparency there. We're with you. It was one of the reasons why we wrote the book, Go Make Disciples, was because it was clear we had settled for mediocrity. So we use a fun example when we open the book. There's an educational researcher from New Zealand who he looked at basically every single analysis of educational interventions he could get his hand on of what works and what doesn't. And the problem with statistical significance is it will tell you if something has a real effect, like the change in the population is not the result of random chance, it's the result of your intervention. Yeah. But what it doesn't tell you is how big of a change that makes. And so there's 300 different educational interventions that a teacher might turn to and say, well, I'm going to do this. And you can't tell me that I'm not a good teacher because my kids learn. Well, you know what? All kids learn because they're like 4 years old and they learn everything. Yeah. And like by the time they start and the time they leave your class, they're like the percentage of their life that they spent with you was 20% of their whole existence.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
naturally, they're going to learn. And
Yeah.
so Hattie was smart enough he used another statistic called an effect size to rank order every single teaching intervention he could find.
Yeah.
And he said, like, look, the average effect size here is 0.4.
Mm.
Why on earth would you do anything below that?
Yeah.
And there's a ton of things that, like, tried and true teaching methods that everybody swears by, that
Yeah.
they're below that average level.
Yeah.
And it's like, why wouldn't you do things that are effect size of like 0.8 and 1.2 and 2.7,
Yeah.
which are out there? And so that was our starting point. And then we said, okay, let's look at the church.
Yeah.
Like, what's our median? Like, where are we? And if we are doing anything that's below median, we need to get rid of it, because we simply don't have the time right now to do anything else. Like, we should be in crisis mode.
Yeah.
But there's still, like, for whatever reason, there's still kind of like this hunky dory thing going of like, oh, we'll be okay.
There are so many factors. So, I mean, it's a little unfair, and it's kind of like, it's a little unfair, and it's preaching to the choir, but I feel for pastors, man. The number pastors are so under-equipped to run a parish. I mean, most pastors receive. I mean, I had a pastor who told me he said, I'm basically making decisions for an organization that has $1 million budget, and I never in seminary talked about money ever. Never took a single accounting class, a single financing class. I'm given hardly any direction from my diocese, and then yet I'm supposed to come up with, like, I just had to learn it on the job, right? Like, our pastors, God bless them, and often the bishops are just like, I just need more priests. Like, I have a hard enough time just filling the spots, let alone getting people that have strong organizational skills or emotional intelligence or a vision for a parish. So anyways, I mean, it's beating it, or it's kind of unfair, but that there's a lot of factors at play.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Anyways, it's almost as if there's like a force out there that knows us better than we know ourselves, and somehow can provide for our insufficiencies. It's almost as if there's something out there that's going to supply for our lack, and that we need, that, like, it's not up to us. I don't know. Just an idea.
Well, I think part of the challenges pastors face nowadays in the church in America is the church, I don't think envisioned parishes being like what they are, I mean, these large structures that need vision, that need these business principles.
Yeah.
And many priests I've spoken with, that's not what they came to shepherd souls. They didn't want vision statements, mission statements. So I think the silver lining in it, though, is the laity being called more and more forward, because those gifts of administration, that's a spiritual gift, people. If you're listening and you're like, I like to organize, I'm boring. No, it's actually a spiritual gift. Your church needs you. And I think it'll be interesting to see over the next 30, 40, 50 years how the church continues to evolve and how it, utilizes lay people.
I think we're right on the edge. Like, I think we're right on the edge. I mean, from my perspective, Toledo, Ohio, not a lot of really dynamic youth ministry going on. Suddenly one parish gets Life Teen, and just purely from a practical perspective, suddenly there's a vision, some type of organizational structure, there's apostolic zeal, there's this integration of evangelization and catechesis. So, like, this good dynamic, right? So, like, let alone the evangelization impact, purely from a practical standpoint, when you compare something like that to, like, roller skating and pizza, I mean, I've heard so many pastors who adopted Life Teen just because they were talking behind closed doors about the increase in their tithe. And so then you start seeing, like, more and more youth ministries, right, getting more dynamic, like investing more money because they're seeing an impact, right, on their bottom dollar, right? Well, then you see all these really dynamic youth ministers start aging into adult positions, and, like, well, what if we could do that for adults? Or what if this more dynamic organizational health, like, this
a lot of
vision?
hope, and there's a lot of interesting things happening around the church. It's really incredible.
Yeah. So then you see, but what I think is happening is more and more, not even just from, like, this is what we should be doing from an evangelization perspective. I think as parishes, as, like, the small 10% experiment and operate really, really well, the other parishes and the other bishops and pastors are like, man, this is really great. Like it almost needs to be tested. And obviously there's so many different models, there's so many different approaches, but I think we're seeing, when you see things like Amazing Parish, Divine Renovation, you see this really good dynamic and healthy balance of all these different things. Like, I think we're right on the verge of seeing parishes really, and there's already parishes doing amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, I'm very hopeful. And again, I don't want to just to say like, I hope I'm not painting all parishes as like awful. I think I'm speaking kind of more freely because I know we know the struggles.
Right.
Obviously, there are parishes like God didn't use PowerPoint. God didn't use toilet paper. God didn't use like all these, right? Like God was effective. Like Jesus was effective, regardless of that stuff, and sometimes in spite of those things. But yeah, again, just wanted to say that like it's not. I hope I'm not sounding so depressing and like
No, not at all. No, it's. I mean, it's helpful. It's like, okay, we know where we stand, and the proper response right now is to do something, to do and like try hard and go all at it.
Yeah.
But the right response is not like business as usual, and to just say, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna like, yeah, I'm not like, I don't want to blame, like, disaffiliation is not because it's not like we knew for the past 40 years that we were doing things drastically wrong. And that led to the result of, like half of millennials who grew up Catholic are no longer Catholic because there's so many things way outside of our control that we had to contend with.
Yeah, for sure.
So now we just got to be nimble and figure out how to pivot and say, okay, well, what do we do about it now? Because they left and we don't want any more to leave. So how do we change our stripes?
Yeah. In some ways that urgency really forces innovation. It forces us to really take a hard look at things. I mean, I heard of, just to leave it really unnamed, I heard of churches that didn't even have the email addresses of their parishioners when things went virtual.
Yeah.
Like that is crazy. And I understand that some parishes are very poor and understaffed and can't do it. But I mean, we have to talk about that. Like we got to talk about that. Like it's 2020.
Right.
And something critical happens and you only have phone numbers and addresses of people. Like,
well, I think exactly, on a microcosm right there because our conversation is, we started getting real about the problem, and that led towards hope, because once you're real about the problem, then you can work towards a solution. What's hurting, I think some places, is they're not being real and honest about what's going on. That's the first step to seeing the silver lining and moving towards hope and moving forwards.
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm very hopeful in the church. And I think that's why I get so frustrated, because you see this potential, you see like, we're right there. Like
we're on the cusp. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Edmund, you mentioned a force working for us. There's also one working against us, as we know. And that is what the evil one does get in the way and thwart the things we're trying to do and create division. So
for sure. Yeah. I thought you were going to say it's my propensity for fast food. That's working against me.
That works against McDonald's. So what's your favorite fast food?
My favorite fast food right now is Popeye's chicken, spicy chicken sandwich, no pickles. That's good. I mean, that's
a Chick-fil-A competitor.
Yes, I know Chick-fil-A is the chosen one, the Messiah. Like Chick-fil-A is the restaurant of people that want to go to heaven. But I got to admit, now if Popeyes did lettuce, onion, tomato, or whatever, like they have the chicken deluxe or whatever at Chick-fil-A with the lettuce and tomato. If they added that to the Popeyes, then that would just be game. I mean, that would be like game over. They won.
I'm in like huge Chick-fil-A heartland country, and so I don't even want to talk about it. But luckily, like my
now Chick-fil-A, yeah, I mean that's my until Popeyes came into my life and tempted me by its with its spicy chicken sandwich.
Are you a Whataburger fan?
I'm okay with it. I'm not mad at it. It's just, Chick-fil-A sells you on this like quality angle, and Whataburger is like in that category of foods that when you eat it, you feel like it's 1 a.m. Like it might not be 1 a.m, but when you eat it, you have that effect of like, it must be 1 a.m. I must have made some bad decisions at some point today to be eating Whataburger. That's just how I personally feel.
It's kind of like if Big Lots opened a fast food restaurant.
That's a good analogy.
People are very passionate about Whataburger. All my kids in youth group would steal all the little like cards, the little numbers and stuff. It was like a big deal here in Texas to have as many as you could have in your truck in the dash, like have as many of those numbers as possible as a high schooler.
Wow. I guess if that's all the trouble they're getting into,
it's actually on the banner of your YouTube channel too, though. The banner image, Whataburger. You guys were eating.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. We're still working on that sponsorship. They've yet to respond to our.
Just email them once more. I'm sure they just missed the first one.
That could be it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your show, you have. So here's what I think is so unique about the show. When we started off, I said your show is unique because of the genre. There's nobody who's doing what you do. Like this is.
How would you define what I do? I'm really interested to.
So you
I
brought
don't even
up.
know if I know what I do.
Yeah, so you brought up Joe Rogan earlier, and you said like Joe Rogan brings. That was probably before we were recording. He brings everybody on, and like this, like I'm waiting. It would be awesome to see Bishop Barron go on Joe Rogan because I think he'd have an awesome time.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna speak information that. No, I'm not saying that he's going on Joe Rogan. But I have heard gossip of like I guess at some point they were trying, like, I think they're not unaware of that.
Yeah.
And no, they're
like they got Dave Rubin, like the whole Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, all of those kind of like crossovers. I think they understand like that's where they should try to go.
Yeah. And I mean, that was, I want to say Rogan said Peterson was his favorite interviewee.
Wow. That's high praise.
Wow. Yeah. But back to the question, like, how would I define your show? So like Rogan, you bring everybody on and you're willing to talk about anything. And so it's also, it reminds me of Good Mythical Morning. And it's like your show is whimsical. It's fun. Like you're just having fun all the time. And so there's like some other really, really great Catholic channels out there. But they
suck.
No.
Oh man,
that was Edmund who said that, not me.
No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to all of our brothers and sisters in podcast land.
But your show is like it's not edutainment. Like your show is entertainment, and so you're authentically entertaining people because you're a great storyteller. You've got a great sense of humor. So it's a comedy show. It's the only Catholic comedy show that I know of out there.
Oh
so
man, my friend Taylor Schroll is gonna get so mad at me. He takes that mantle of Catholic. No,
Taylor who?
Taylor Schroll. Exactly. You heard it here. You heard it, Taylor. Dan said it.
I'm sorry, Taylor. I don't even know you. I just
I think all of that came out of in parish ministry. So to get even deeper in what I said before about the call to parish ministry and missionary, and I feel very strongly that I have a deep vocation to be a catechist, and I love catechesis. I love it too much. I'm a pain in the butt when it comes to talking about catechetics. And I think I just got to a point where I didn't want to bring work home in a way. And that sounds bad. It sounds like I do see it as ministry, but I was already putting all of my creative energy and was already doing a lot of that, doing a lot of the not education, but catechesis and evangelization that was much more explicit and defined.
Yeah.
And I reached a point where I got so oversaturated by that I just had to take a step back, and I started listening to comedy podcasts and just anything I could that was not Catholic, and looking for like finding in Joe Rogan and finding in all of these other places, things that really built me up or I appreciated. And so I think that's where that kind of came out of was, okay, I'm just going to start something where there are no rules. There's no side hustle attached to it. It's just show up and be us. And it could be anything. And it's still that way, like that's the best part of it, is just doing it, not how many people listen or any of that. It's the highest praise that you, I guess, see that that's kind of what's going on in my head.
Well, glad that so there's at least two people who see that and understand that, you and me.
Well, probably three. My mom as well.
There you go. Yeah. No, our moms definitely got our book. So like Justin's mom and my mom bought so many books.
Yeah. I had to talk to my mom. My mom used to always comment, and I need to tell her to start commenting again. But at one point I got insecure because I was like, Mom, like when there's no comments and you're the only comment, like that, it starts looking and my friends start making fun of me, But anyways, she's great. Shout out to Doreen.
Shout out to moms.
That's
sorry, you were saying great, wonderful things about me, Dan. I took you off topic.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We can talk about how moms are awesome with social media.
No, that's
and
not
do
enough.
Great things on there.
It's not about me enough. We need to come back to me and my show. Okay, so you were saying one of the things you noticed about the show, because I am interested in hearing your perspective on that, or why you think there needs to be that, or I don't know where that fits in the world.
It's because it's fun.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same word is fun, because with Catholic evangelization and things, we don't use humor enough. We're just not fun enough. We're so serious.
Yeah.
So it's great to have someone like you just liven us up and say, don't take life so seriously. God is in control. Let's have fun. Let's be human.
Yeah.
Right. Let's be human beings and enjoy all that culture has to offer, being in the world but not of the world. So I think you strike a really good balance of that, having fun while still remaining true to who you are, as trying to be a follower of Jesus Christ.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, that really means a lot.
Yeah, there's that Chesterton quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit, but it's like, if the saints can levitate, it's because they take themselves lightly. And
that's a good one.
It's like I think you guys you don't take yourself too seriously. And you just have fun with it. There's happy to.
There's also a really Chesterton quote, something about the pint, the pipe, and the cross. And at one point we did have we had a podcast for a little bit, very early days when I was trying to figure all this stuff out. But we came up with it. I think someone else probably came up with this idea. It's not a original, but between the pint and the cross. And I really, in my mind, think a lot about that. Like, not that they're on two ends of the spectrum. I mean, they're not, but the idea of, most people think of the pub and the church as very different places,
right?
But somewhere in that balance, right? Yeah. Somewhere in between, I think is a really beautiful place to be.
And that's not our Catholic thing, and that's Puritanism that crept into our thinking,
100%,
here in America. Yeah. But the church does not have a tradition like that. We are meant to enjoy the good things God gives us, and yes, we're in Lent right now, so we refrain. But it's like, so much in the world is good. We have to be careful not to reject things, and we have to. I mean, I think you're a poor evangelist if you're not smiling.
Yeah,
you really 100%. Do.
Well, just be normal
about that. You just gotta That's the beginning. Mother Teresa talked about that all the time. Yeah. It starts with a smile.
Yeah, one of the highest compliments I could, one of the best things that could ever happen with the show, that has happened a few times, that really, I'm like on cloud 9 for months, is when someone comments that they're not Catholic and they didn't know I was Catholic and just came across the show and have been listening for a while and have slowly, there's a guy I connected with who was like, I started trying to look up Catholic churches. He found a Franciscan order and he thought it was a Catholic church, like a parish. So he found this website for a Franciscan order near him and was like, I was really confused about, like, when do I show up? How do I become a part of it? Why are they all wearing brown robes? But it was one of the highest compliments that he was just like, I love listening. And he's like, it made me want to check it out. He's like, I don't know. And I told him, like, I'm not trying to secretly make him Catholic, but I just love, I love that. So there's that. That's another reason why I'm awesome. And this is what this podcast episode is becoming. It's becoming.
That's a good title. Edmund Mitchell is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Oh my
gosh. I was thinking Edmund Mitchell, our most humble guest.
Oh yeah. My wife will really love that. She'll be like, really roll her eyes. Be like, finally.
Yes. Welcome everybody. If you are just joining us, it is the show on our podcast with the most humble guest in the history of guests.
Humble guest.
So I've got a great story. When I was in college, I went to visit my sister, and this is about kind of like humility and pride. And we were going to the ceremony for the unveiling of a statue that a artist she was friends with was celebrating. And so it was like her husband's friend. They had known each other for a long time. And so I go to this guy's house, and it's everything you would think an artist studio would be like. So it's 3 stories. The second story is a mess. Like there's there's like paintings and dust and everything everywhere for this guy doing mock-ups. And as we're leaving, he's out on the front porch smoking a cigarette. And I had not yet met him. So I get introduced to him right then and there. And he looks at me and he says, "I would love to sculpt you."
Wow.
He said you would make.
Oh my gosh.
He said you would make a great Saint Dunstan. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sorry if you're on the podcast, you are deprived of this. I have this like very serious caveman brow and like a lot of bone action going on.
I wouldn't say that. I would say when God was sculpting you, it was a strong choice. I would say he made a strong choice. It's not saying caveman is pretty rough.
Let's go with Neanderthal. It's a little less, but it's a shelf. I can put my sunglasses up there, and I walk around on a daily basis, and my sunglasses are resting on my face.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
And people are like,
talk about an opening line.
I know that was like, it's like I was on cloud 9 for like 3 years.
Man,
for some guy to say he wanted to sculpt me. But
wow.
Well, so one of the things,
was your wife concerned at all?
We were not dating at the time, and so no.
So there you go.
Yeah. I think she has the same feeling though. Like if I asked her, she'd probably say if she could sculpt, she would want to sculpt my face.
Wow, that's all you can ask in a wife is that that she desired to sculpt you.
Your face.
That was on the checklist I gave her when I. Well, you brought up fruit, and the fruit of what you're doing. And
fruit.
Yeah, not real fruit, a different spiritual fruit. So I was curious, when you started this, were you hoping that something would come out of it, or was it just like, hey, I've got this itch and I feel like the Lord's asking us to do this, so let's do it?
I mean, to be completely honest, I've always dabbled in, ever since being a youth minister, 2011 when I started youth ministry, it's like, let's make flyers. And you start seeing some people in the church doing cool stuff and you're like, let's make it better, And so I dabbled in graphic design and Photoshop and then video editing. And then launched a small project for a while with some people, around the time Blessed Is She was launching. I was like, oh, let's website. Like, there's no cool websites and all this stuff. And so there have been tons of failed attempts at podcasts, or I don't know if you call them failed attempts because they were fun to do. So there was lots of fits and starts of like, let's just do this. So a lot of those though, I was a lot more trying to make something happen or trying to, okay, well, this fits into this brand or this community or this thing I'm trying to do, or it's for the parish or it's for a side thing or whatever. So for the show, honestly, it was the first time that I said, I just want to show up and put in the reps of doing it. And I'm not going to care what it's for, but I'm going to do something like this. That's why I called it the show, because it's such a dumb name. I was just like, it gave me the freedom. I intentionally picked a stupid name because I wanted to remind myself every time I did it that it was just to show up and have fun and do it and not worry about who listened or what the intention was. And in the very early days, it was just on Anchor, the podcast app. And I would do stupid, like one point I just like took my phone outside and threw it as high up in the air as I could while it was recording and was just like talking into I interviewed a Jedi Knight, like someone who I guess LARPs as a Jedi Knight. I just was doing whatever and then I invite people over. And so, yeah, no, I think now that's the most straightforward answer. Now, it's kind of tough because like my motivation at every point of my life is like wanting everyone around me to become like know Jesus and get to heaven. And so it's tough, to navigate like, what do I mean? Like if a friend who's not Catholic is listening to it, I mean, I would tell them, I'm not going to actively try to convert you, but I also can't change who I am. And I'm going to talk about what I love. And hopefully I love Jesus enough that something happens, like that fruit happens. So yeah, I mean, I think, would I love that 10 years from now, the show's still going and people are like, oh my gosh, I met Jesus through the podcast. It was so amazing. Yeah. I kind of do hope that, but I'm trying to actively divorce that intentionality from it.
Yeah.
Because there are other areas of my life where I am being extremely intentional about that. And for the show, it's more pre-evangelization, I guess, or just free from that kind of necessity or pressure.
Right.
Well, something I've been reflecting on is how the essence of being, just being, is a good,
Oh,
right?
here
Because
we go. Here we go.
I like
Lay it on
I
us.
yes. So because I'm someone too that it's all about productivity. Fill it. If I've got even a
Yeah.
30-minute drive I didn't expect, I was like, all right, who am I going to call? What am
Yeah.
I going to do?
Yeah.
But just being alive is good.
Mm.
So it makes sense for each of us to have those spaces where we don't worry about the productivity, so to speak,
Yeah.
but we just are who God wants us to be.
Yeah.
Um, I had a question, Edmund, too. Is I saw one of your older videos. It's a really really popular one about where you looked at different Catholic Bibles and reviewed
Yeah.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that one went pretty viral. How do you
Well,
go
pretty.
about?
I mean, compared to, Matt Frad's over here doing these.
Well, yeah,
Well,
but
yeah, but no, I mean,
yeah, you had
for me, it was
thousands and
viral.
thousands of people reviewing Catholic Bibles. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How do you go about choosing topics, guests? Do you pray on it and do it, or how does that go about? You just see what God brings in front of you, or
Yeah, man, for the show right now, it's a little bit of that sweet spot, like riding the wave between opportunity and desire, right? Like there are things I would like to do, and then there are doors that open. And so like the big transition happened where I decided to add video. That was really interesting because then I stopped doing remote guests, and I was like, I wonder how long I could go just having in-person guests. And the only necessity was that I publish an episode every week. So other than that, I was just lining up people, and I have friends that are interesting, and I would just constantly DM people like, hey, like, over 10 years of parish ministry and just being on social media, like, you make a lot of friends. And so I would just constantly be like, hey, if you're ever in town, like, come on my podcast, it'd be fun, and so there's a big shift where I wanted to just see how long I could go. And I thought, oh, it'll maybe 4 or 5 episodes, and then I'll run out of people coming in person. And so often it was like, there's no guests. So I just drag my youth minister friends over. And then there were other times where, like, people would come in town and we'd do it. And after a year, it was like, man, we've done a lot of episodes in person. So it's a little bit of that, it's a little bit of both. It's like an opportunity, someone's in town, or things I would like to do, and just kind of navigating that. So yeah, no, I wouldn't say that there's too much thought going into it. The most recent kind of version of it, though, is going to be, some pretty standard, like, every week guests, and then the people, or co-hosts, I guess, and then the people that come in that are kind of special guests every now and then.
very nice. I like
What
it. Right in the wave.
I love the live guest thing, and not like
Yeah,
everybody in
the studio looks
different.
awesome.
It's very different. Like, it's really awesome seeing Matt Frad kind of leaning into that too, in the YouTube game. Like, I would say if there's anyone else doing it, I mean, it's Matt Frad. And it's really awesome seeing him lean into that. It's really cool. I mean, so it's a little misleading to say I had no plan when I quit my parish, because, like, I at least, like, had ideas of how I could help people. And one of the things that had been happening a lot was people hiring me to freelance as, like, help me do something like content marketing. So, so that's kind of what has it now. It turned into, a little agency where we help people do video podcasting, content marketing, social media, and stuff like that. So yeah, I care so much about it. That's kind of all I'm doing right now.
There's a pretty good big market for it right now, since
Yeah,
it's like what everybody did for a year.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. It's cool seeing the church, adapting and evolving and going into that area. Yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. I'm really excited for the future and what the church is going to look like in a couple of years.
Yeah. No, notwithstanding all the like the tragedy of the pandemic,
Yes,
the great
that's
reset
awful.
that happened. I
Yeah,
mean, it's this huge reset with the church where we finally had a chance to stop and say, what can we do differently? Because there's
yeah,
so much momentum for things that I think people didn't necessarily like, but
yes,
it was very difficult. It took more effort to stop than it
yes,
did to just keep it going.
yes.
And
And just how quickly parishes had to pivot, right? And the other thing that's interesting, and this needed to happen, parishes needed to learn this, and ministers needed to learn this, is that we're kind of at peak resource. Like there are so many, like I always say, we have drone footage of Father Dave Pavanka walking in a desert. Like, how much more Catholic content? Like, we have the most elaborate, over the top Catholic content. There is so much content out there.
Yeah.
You know, every Lent, there is 1,000 people doing a take on 5 things you didn't know about Lent, right? So we're at peak. And like, when I was working at a parish, it was like, why would we do something with cameras? How do you compete with Mass at the Vatican being live streamed, right?
Right.
And the thing that people learned, and the thing that I talk about a lot, is that the only way you can compete with Father Mike Schmitz, the most beautiful man, the most beautiful priest alive, right? The only way you compete with that, not that you compete, but like the only value you add is not in trying to do a more beautiful reflection than Bishop Barron, but in talking about your parish, like talking about local. Like, Father Mike Schmitz can't compete with me talking about the gospel and my local taco shop here in Grapevine.
Right.
Like the localness, the geographic specificness of, like, why should a parish have a podcast? To talk about their community, to like lean into what the gospel, what Father Mike Schmidt's reflection on the Bible means to Grapevine, Texas, to us living right here.
I totally agree. The more that things can happen on a local level, the better. The more innovation at the local level, at the parish level, the better. So, more podcasts isn't a bad thing. It's not competition. It's a good thing, because it's reaching people more as long as it's all focused on the locale. Like you said, not trying to compete. I totally agree with you. Don't compete.
And it's great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, everyone should make, I mean, if you have a desire to make a podcast, like, or make content, or make it and teach. And it's not saying we shouldn't be teaching, but one of the questions you had sent me was, where do you see the gap? And I think you guys agree that, like, the gap is, there is a gap though, in just that, like, sharing of your witness, like your unique witness. Like, no one else can tell your story. So share your perspective on the gospel, not your like against church teaching perspective, but just
living it in Grapevine, living it in Orlando, living it in Victoria. Yes.
Exactly. Like, so.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's like you said, we have so many books and so many video series, and there's good stuff, like more and more good stuff that like keeps coming out. Like, I just came across something with Revive today, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, man, this is really good. Like, whoever wrote this stuff, like, props to them, because they did a great job with it. But like, at the end of the day, no book, no video series, and nothing is going to convert people, but like your witness to Jesus Christ will. And that's like, if we want to scale it, the trick isn't like, let's sell more books. The trick is, let's like spend more time with people so that they become convinced that Jesus is Lord and he's worth following with their whole life.
Yeah. Amen.
But that's a lot of work, because it just means you got to give up your Friday nights and your Saturday and your Sunday mornings to be with people, rather than just doing your own thing.
Yeah. Amen, man.
Well, so kind of like, let's explore that idea a little bit. Recognizing there's a ton of good content out there already. What could, like, if you were talking to Gen Zers, and there's somebody who maybe doesn't feel the need to go into professional ministry, but still wants to evangelize, they know they need to evangelize, what approach do you think they could take using new media to get out there and be effective and have a voice?
I'm always a pain with these types of questions, because I always like ask, really, like, okay, well, what type of person am I talking to? Like, what is their context? So you're saying a Gen Zer who does feel the call to evangelize using maybe social media,
anything.
That's the question.
Yeah, could be YouTube, could be social media. Yeah.
And then the question is, what advice would I give them?
Yeah. So if we'll just say, like, to 22-year-old you.
Oh, to 22-year-old me. That's a really good question. See, I get in this weird, like, what is this? Like the time travel paradox, where it's like, well, I wouldn't say anything that would ruin the journey that brought me to where I am. So now but I get the idea of the question. I mean, I would say follow the instinct that, for me, and for I think a lot of people, there are some people called to be position themselves as experts, and there are some people that are called to just share that witness as a mentor. And from what I understand, like in the Roman Empire or maybe the Greek world, I don't know, let's just say the ancient world, a mentor was not someone who taught, it was someone who was responsible for getting kids like from home to the right instructor. So like to know the kid well enough to know, like they weren't their peer, but they also weren't their teacher.
Yeah.
They were someone who could walk with them and accompany them and show them kind of the way, and had been there before and could talk about it and share life that way. And I think there's a lot of people, maybe especially for me when I was 22 or when I was younger, I felt all this pressure to position myself as an expert and a teacher. And I think I would just encourage myself to lean much more into being yourself and exploring your curiosities and giving just your humble perspective on things. It's saying, here's what I'm working through. Here's what I'm thinking. You know, I'm reading this book by this crazy guy. Like here's, you know, I heard this stand-up comedian talking about his Catholic upbringing, and here's what I'm thinking about, or here's how I feel like Joe Rogan is enriching my spiritual life somehow. You know, like I think I would just encourage people to lean into that and not be afraid that they have to give like the correct catechism summary in a TikTok, you know, like I wish I would go back to me. And again, it's beautiful. People are called to teach, and I feel a vocation to be a catechist, and like we need to explicitly teach. But I would go back and look at some of my stuff, and I would probably talk to myself and say, who are you teaching this to? Like, who's watching this that you're teaching this to? Like, everyone that's watching this knows 5 things about Lent that they've never known before, right?
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So
like, yeah, I don't know. That's just particular to my own journey, but
I agree. Basically, you need, be you. And then also, I love what you said earlier in our conversation about just getting the reps, right? You got to just go do it and keep trying. Bishop Barron talks a lot about that too in the world of apologetics, that you're going to get cut up and beat up. But if you got to keep going out there for battle. So for all the people thinking about it, they just need to go do it.
The other thing I would say is that, especially for now, especially right now, the interesting thing in the gap, again, coming back to the gap, the interesting thing is the collabs. The interesting thing is Bishop Barron talking to Dave Rubin. The interesting thing is, you know, being a Catholic TikToker who collabs with someone way outside, right? And there is a place for the apologetics and debates, but there's also a place to just love Jesus really, really passionately, and also have a conversation on social media with people who are completely unlike you.
Yeah.
So I think I would discern that.
I like that a lot, especially when you pointed out that, you know, if we're making a video that's just for other Catholics and just for other Catholics who are consuming Catholic media on social media, are we like, how much are we preaching to the choir? It's almost like we're fishing in the boat.
Yeah.
Like all the Catholic fish are in the boat already, and we need to like cast a line way out there. And
go out really far. I think that's where we're going to see more and more of that, I think. And I think there's probably already people out there. I mean, Mark Wahlberg, you know, openly Catholic man, you know, there you go. And his wife, you know, so, but I mean, you know, I'm joking, but like, I think we're going to see more and more of that, of like, it's a delicate balance too, because I am sensitive, and I do hear old me saying, unless the name of Jesus is explicitly proclaimed, there is no evangelization, right? Like Paul the Sixth or something. There is a fine line to walk. You can't just be polite and hope that one day they will find out that you were polite because of your deep faith in Jesus. So you should be courageous and apostolic zeal. But there's also, especially in our modern world, there's a way to do it that we have to be sensitive to.
Yeah. We got to build trust first.
Yes.
And if we skip that step, like, we, you know, when we just assume that somebody's ready for the gospel, we're answering questions that haven't been asked.
100%. Yeah.
It's like a doctor who only has one prescription. It's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but here, I'm going to give you this.
Yes.
And like, that's not the reality with the world.
100. Yeah. Yeah, man. Ah, lot to unpack there.
Yeah, yeah. So, did you catch your phone when you threw it up in the air?
I did. I did. Fortunately or unfortunately, I did. It sounded great. I should listen back to it because it sounded really cool. Yeah. I've
So
done
what if
some weird stuff. I've done some weird stuff on the show. And at some point I need to stop pretend like because for a while, especially working at Parish, I just would tell myself, well, no one's listening anyways. I have caught myself saying that a few times recently where I felt like it's a little disingenuous because I mean it's not massive by any means, but like I do need to at some point just stop pretending that it's just my mom listening and
right,
maybe
Yeah, yeah.
Taylor.
right.
But yeah, man, I've done some weird stuff on the show.
How many years have you been kind of uh, trying to go deeper in the world of evangelization, social media, YouTube, and what have been like one or two of your major lessons learned along the way?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think all of us in college, when we were thinking about doing youth ministry, we were like, all right, social media is going to play a role in this. So, I mean, in that sense, I lived, I'm a millennial. I lived through this transition to the internet. I remember AOL and like the dial up, all that stuff going on. So, I mean, in that sense, I've always been kind of a part of social media and then youth ministry. It was like, hey, here's this, we can reach teens and invite them to youth group without having to show up at their door. And um, so I've been involved for a long time. The biggest lessons learned, I think, are the, things other than things I've already mentioned. I mean, I think the biggest, you know what? The biggest lesson, another thing I'll mention is that a lot of the angst about social media that I used to feel, a lot of the like, am I doing it right? Are people doing it right? Are, um, even what borderline scrupulosity about, well, if I'm posting this selfie, am I self-centered or am I, not, like, how am I doing? A lot of that is just being over scrupulous. And for me, the heuristic or the like framework that I think of is how would I approach this? Like the same rules apply if we were just in a room together. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm in a room with you, I'm not worrying. Like it's real freshman year of high school issues to be worrying about how you look and how am I being perceived and am I saying things perfectly? It's like, no, like social media is turning more and more into the living room of the internet. Like when I'm, if we're all hanging out together in a living room and I say something a certain way and I don't totally mean it right, I'm not suddenly worried that I can't like clarify or go back and change it. I think we're finding that more and more that we're getting more patient about that. So anyways, I guess that's a big lesson is like a lot of that stuff's just all in your head. No one's telling you how to do social media or how not to do it. No one's telling you that you have to
Yeah.
look at your phone or you don't. It's all just in your head, it's all made up, all that
Yeah.
pressure.
Because you can find people, like, no matter what they're doing, you can find people who are popular, and I use that like in a neutral way, not that it's good,
Yeah.
bad, or indifferent. Like
Yeah.
there are people who are popular on social media who do everything that the experts say you shouldn't do. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
there's a gardener who this is like a weird thing about me. I like tropical fruit gardening, and so there's this like super fun guy
That fruit
who
comment earlier makes sense now too.
yeah
'Cause I
yeah
was
no,
like,
no.
This is a
Edmund didn't
theme.
mention fruit, but you were like,
This is a
you
through
talked
line.
about fruit.
But
This is a
he's
through line.
trying to what's his name? He's like the Bob Ross of tropical fruit gardening. So
Yeah.
he's super positive, like great energy, but his video quality is like garbage. It's
Yeah,
like
Dan,
Yeah.
480,
I did not know this about you, by the way.
right? No, I'm full
Actually,
of
something I
surprises.
like a big
Yeah.
like
So I grew
discovery.
this awesome trellis covered with passion fruit in my backyard.
Wow.
And, I mean,
That's
this was
amazing.
like oh, yeah, there were hundreds of feet of passion fruit vine, and when it fruited, all of these fruit popped up, and it was so exciting, and then a hurricane came and knocked the whole thing over, and it all
Oh,
died, and I haven't grown them back since because 'cause I'm
oh
still a
my
little
gosh.
scarred by it. So this guy, though, he uses a refurbished, like, $200 camera,
Yeah.
and so his resolution's low, and you get a lot of wind noise in the background.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
his videos get hundreds of thousands of views.
So I just searched fruit gardening on YouTube. There he is, man. 1.2 million views, 1.3
Yeah.
million
This
views.
is the thing. This is the thing. Yes, we should say no to mediocrity and strive for the highest quality. And I'm like constantly trying to push myself. But also, if I could find shaky iPhone camera footage of Mother Teresa talking about
Oh
like
yeah.
I would watch it because the content's
Well,
great.
what's funny though is, you see other folks on their fruit tree shows here. Dan, now I've searched fruit gardening on my YouTube. Thank you
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And they're doing the things that you're supposed to do, right? But they're not getting the results. It's this
Yeah.
man that has figured it out, and he zooms you in on the blackberries. I mean, he
Yeah.
does take you in there. So
There's
He's
a place.
thank you,
excited.
Dan. Now Edmund and I have hours we can waste now watching these fruit tree videos.
There's a balance, right? Like content and quality, like content and equipment quality, or
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's a balance to be had there, but I think we strive for the highest in both.
Yeah. And if you can't do good quality, then do bad quality. Like it's better to
Yeah.
do it poorly than not at all.
Yeah, yeah, and also, I mean, this is like every artist's dynamic and battlefield is like trying to wrestle with how perfect do I need to get it before I publish it?
Yeah,
How quickly am I publishing? And everyone has to answer that question for themselves. Like George Lucas has a certain cadence to the content he's putting out that's going to be very different than a Casey Neistat daily vlogging, and there's no right answer. There's no. It's all the internal pressure. Like you don't have to be doing any of it. Like just get off social media. Don't be on it at all. Like, anyways.
Yeah. Or don't consume, like just produce. To me, that's actually really fun. Like to not go on and engage in any way, but just put stuff out there.
Yeah.
And
it's super fun.
Yeah. Cause then a lot of the game is gone at that point of worrying what other people think about you.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's one of the funnest things is not, but everyone has to find their balance. I mean, there was a point in my life, especially right when I got out of Franciscan, I was so passionate for like evangelization and getting out here. And there's a war on Christmas and there's a culture of meth and we have to push against it. And like, we have to really like, oh, we're out here. And I was just like, keep consuming more Scott Hahn books and like more like Al Cresta in the morning, catechism on one hand, newspaper on the other. Tell me about what am I going to be mad about? We're doing this, And I got to the point where I was like, man, I have been more influenced by people teaching me and like people's perspective, as great as it is and as great as these teachers are. But I haven't gone to the source. I don't think I had meditated enough on the doctrine of even just the Trinity and allowed it to change my personal relationship with Jesus. And so I like got to this point where I was like, man, like I am really surviving off of other people's, other people being inspired and like built up by the doctrine,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had to get to this. For me, I just got to this place where I'm like, man, like that's all I'm consuming. Like I'm not even having interesting conversations with anyone that's not Catholic, And so you gotta. And I think in a lot of people, for a lot of people, you have to kind of mature into that point where you've learned enough. Like now just go live, like go out there and engage in the world. And anyways, that was on my soapbox, but yeah, I think that's really important to just go out and then just start producing, just start doing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot
that's
of
my
us
take.
A lot of us have gone through that phase, I think, of our generation.
Yeah, and it's normal. Like I don't mean to make people feel bad. I mean, it's sorry, Justin, I cut you off. Keep going.
Well, I think that it's the nature of how media is consumed nowadays too, that we self-select what we want. So we fuel ourselves up more and more and more. And I think I've seen a number of guys, myself included, you reach this tipping point. They say, all right, I can't fix everything.
Yeah.
I'm not praying enough. I'm not happy. Yeah. And we start that journey back towards the cross and then can like just breathe a little bit more,
Yeah.
Realize we're not in control. God's in control.
For me, it came all the way back to, for me at that time in my life, it was like the catechism. The catechism became this new thing in my life, and not just intellectual formation, but reading the fathers of the catechism and reading like that it was totally in line with Vatican II and the spirit of evangelization and charisma. And suddenly for the first time, I was like praying with the catechism and then going to the bar.
That's awesome.
And then living my life. And then finding how that like came out in my life was just so,
it's a good place
so cool, you know?
Yeah. Were you going to the bar catechism in hand? Like you'd belly up and like plop it down on the bar top?
So it was like, I was doing youth ministry in Toledo but then also like wanting to be like wrestling with all of this. Like, I don't know. I'm not even talking to people that aren't Catholic at this point. So then it was returning to trying to sit at the feet of the church and let the divine revelation itself like change me and not try to read it through the lens of a book, which those are all great, but like I wanted to go to it. And then it was just leaving the catechism at home and then just being in the bar, like just living, you know, and just talking to people. And stuff would just come up. Like there was this one, I call her Taco Kim, started talking to me and my friend. And it was just like, we bought her tacos and then cause she was out of money or something, there was something like she forgot her card or something. And then the next week we talked again. And then the third week she found out we were youth ministers at the church next door.
Oh, wow.
And then at some point,
that's evangelization. That's it.
Yeah. Like it was and then at some point she was like, what is everything about? And I had been praying with Catechism Paragraph 1.
Yeah.
And it just came out of me. And it wasn't like, well, this guy, Scott Hahn says, it just for the first time,
it was real.
Yeah. It really came out of me. And I was like, look,
that's
like
awesome.
God freely created man to share in his life. And that life is love and relationship. And we're made for that. And that's what I believe. And then we had this beautiful conversation where she cried and argued and it was just great. And that was the first time where I was like, okay, this for me is where I need to live is like, yeah. Anyways,
that's
spend more time in bars.
Yeah, exactly. My wife would disagree, but yeah.
Well, Edmund, I feel like we could keep going for another couple hours, but we probably got to wrap up. So thanks so much for coming on. It's been a blast talking with you.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful. And thanks for being patient with me. I'm all over. I'm Eddie 2 cups of coffee. That's what you're getting right now. I mean, I'm all over the place, but thanks for letting me just kind of get on here and rant and vent.
Our pleasure, man. No, it was great. Just like seeing what the Spirit wanted us to talk about and seeing what comes up and letting the conversation meander all over the place. So
guys,
and anytime you're in Grapevine, you're welcome on the show.
I would love to hang out with you in Grapevine sometime. We should come there, Dan. Dan should come visit Texas and we'll meet out there.
I am going to look right now and see what it's going to cost. What's the nearest airport to you, Dallas?
DFW. I can like hit it with a rock. It's so close. DFW airport is like 3 minutes away. The DFW airport.
I can fly there for $34.
Holy cow. Come this weekend. I'm sleeping at this studio.
This needs to happen, Dan.
I wouldn't have a place for you other than just us sleeping on couches in the studio.
That's okay.
But yeah, guys, absolutely. And you're welcome anytime, even if you just need a place to crash. But yeah, if you want to be on the show, if you're in town, we'll do it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, count on our prayers until then. We'll talk offline about coming out there and setting something up.
Sounds great.
All righty. Peace be with you, man. Have a great night. Thanks again.
Good night, folks.